Hey everyone, this is Trell bringing you a quick overview and Brewmaster Mythic Plus guide for patch 8.0 of the new expansion Battle for Azeroth, releasing soon, next week. This guide is based around pushing Mythic Plus dungeons as a Brewmaster, but will also include many tanking tips and strategies that should benefit anyone looking to get started. If this is your first time tuning in, I have been playing Brewmaster for a few years and started pushing keys in Legion around the time the first MDI started up. I post the better Mythic Plus runs on YouTube often, so keep your eyes out for the latest videos. And with that, let's jump right into talents. On the level 15 talent row, Chi Burst is the best bet on this tier for Mythic Plus. The extra damage and aggro generated on AoE is well worth it, especially because of the new threat values for tanks and BfA. It is also good to note that you can use this ability while kiting far from the pack. Next we have the level 30 talent row. This is all personal preference, but I always take Chi Torpedo. Often in Mythic Plus you need to do large pulls and travel long distances to get all of the mobs rounded up. Torpedo gives you consistent speed bonuses to both get the pull going and keep kiting during the pull when needed. Tiger's Lust on this tier is also a very viable option. Next we have the controversial level 45 row here, and there are two good choices for Brewmasters, Light Brewing and Black Ox Brew. Black Ox Brew is better on paper, and that's because you have full uptime on the boss, you're able to do rotation, and it generates a few more charges of brews than Light Brewing would. However, in a realistic Mythic Plus environment, you have a lot of downtime between packs and while you're kiting, where you can't always Tiger Palm or use Keg Smash. So I actually get more brews out of Light Brewing right now, and especially when you have Lust going, you just can purify like crazy, which is great. It's a lot less damage taken. Spitfire is worth mentioning, but is a very tiny DPS increase rather than a big defensive increase like Light Brewing, so I tend to just ignore it in Mythic Plus. On the level 60 tier, your default choice will be Ring of Peace. Ring is simply a very strong ability and has many uses in dungeons. In Legion, Leg Sweep was on the same tier as Ring, so Sweep was the go-to. Now in BfA, however, with Sweep being baseline to all 3 Monk specs, hallelujah, Ring is more viable and should be taken. Another good talent on this tier is the Black Ox statue, also known as Dave, and should be used when aggro cannot be maintained without the talent. I will show later in the video some good spots to use Ring of Peace, but just know that it is very nice utility to have when used well. On the 75 row, Dampen Harm is the best choice in Mythic Plus. Dampen lines up well with the burst damage that comes out at the beginning of most pulls and dungeons, where you have several packs at once. You must be in melee for some time while building initial threat, and Dampen can reduce all of the damage that comes in during then by about half. Bob and Weave is also a good talent, but it's built more for raids when you have several healers at once, and you may not need Dampen Harm to survive. So for the level 90 tier, we have Special Delivery and Rushing Jade Wind as good options here. In Mythic Plus, Rushing Jade Wind pulls ahead. It does more damage throughput at the moment, and it's fun to use, looks great. Special Delivery is also a good talent. It has a niche in that it slows for 50% of the move speed, but it doesn't do as much damage, and it actually can miss the mobs. It could still be a good choice if you have no other option in the party for a slow, but it's just a little inconsistent. And finally, for the level 100 talent row, we have High Tolerance and Guard, which are both good choices for Mythic Plus. Blackout Combo was the go-to in Legion for lots of things, but the Tiger Palm damage increase right now is pretty insignificant, so I'll largely ignore this one. So between High Tolerance and Guard, I'm always defaulting to High Tolerance, and I'm kind of bummed because Guard looks cool, feels good to use, but I just can't ever feel the same defensive value as I get out of High Tolerance. High Tolerance with the haste and the 8% more stagger together just makes it too good in my opinion. It actually gives you a little more damage as well with the haste. More kick smashes, more brews, more purifies. Well, Guard definitely has potential. For now, I just can't drop High Tolerance for it in Mythic Plus. For a quick summary of stat balance in Mythic Plus, let's just say that luckily you can go for highest eye level and gear pieces. All 4 secondary stats benefit Brewmaster defensively in different ways. With the new change of never being able to swap gear in dungeons, boo, it is probably best to go into a dungeon wearing a nice balance of stats. There is a nice mix of physical and magic damage in each dungeon, and I haven't seen a big reason to stack Mastery or Verse or anything specific yet. I also pulled up my character sheet from beta here, just so you can see about how much we will have in the first raid tier. This character is at 377 eye level, which is about what we would expect in the first few weeks of Mythic Raid release in BfA. Moving into Azerite traits for Brewmaster. I'll very briefly cover the Brewmaster Azerite traits, only because big tuning changes are still likely to happen, and only 2 of the brew specific traits are even worth taking at all at the moment. The other 4 traits are actually so bad right now. The first good Azerite trait we have is called Training of Nuzao. And when I say good, I mean very good. You get constant mastery as long as you have any kind of stagger at all. The mastery that Training of Muzhou gives is both good offensively and defensively, and in addition can stack with other Training of Muzhou traits on your other pieces of armor. The other good Azerite trait we have is called Elusive Footwork, and this is somewhat like the tier 21 bonus that we had from Antorus the Burning Throne and Legion. This trait is especially good for single target damage as it pumps up your Blackout Strike quite a bit. However, it can also be used in Mythic Plus to cheese some dodgeable boss mechanics. In Mythic Plus, I think you might as well just stack 3 Training of Muzhou traits. If you have the opportunity, if you have a high eye level piece of Elusive Footwork, it may be worth it, but I'm aiming for all 3 stacks of Training of Muzhou. Alright, so moving on, I did want to mention a couple tanking fundamentals I think are important for anyone looking to tank Mythic Plus. Threat frames. This is important. This is a way to tell which mobs you have aggro on, which mobs you're losing aggro on, or at the beginning of a pull you can see what you don't have any aggro on at all, and then watch their nameplates turn different colors as you get aggro. I personally prefer and use the LVOI default threat frames, and what it does is it shows red when I don't have aggro on the mob, yellow when I'm about to lose aggro but I still have aggro, and green when I securely have aggro on the mob. I don't really think it matters which add-on you use to track a threat like this, but as long as you have something, that way every time your healer starts yelling, I have threat, you can say, I know. Second on the list here, I have tracking interrupts and externals. And again, much like the threat nameplates, I don't think it matters how you track externals or interrupts as long as you do it in the first place. I personally use a weak aura for both interrupts and externals. Using potions. Before you go into any pull, whether that be trash packs or a boss, make sure you put one of your potions on cooldown, whether that's the new Battle Potion of Agility or the Lightfoot Potion for speed. In Legion, these were called Potions of Prolonged Power and Skystep Potions. These are just the new BfA versions of the potions. Also note here that it's key to start the cooldown of the potion before you enter actual combat. That way the cooldown's running while you're doing the whole pull or boss fight, and then you have another ready for the next pull afterward. It is also important to maximize your threat generation on AoE pulls. It's not so important on a boss because you can always taunt the boss, but on AoE there's lots of mobs and you can't taunt every single one. Unless you're running the Summon Black Ox statue talent, otherwise known as Dave, which then you actually could AoE taunt everything in the pull. But with or without Dave, there are a couple things you need to note before going into an AoE pull that might be a little hard to keep threat. Our biggest source of threat generation is Keg Smash. So the very first Keg Smash sets it all in motion. So if mobs are spread to the point where Keg Smash won't hit them all on pull, you should actually wait until all the mobs are within a circle wide enough for Keg Smash to hit every single one of them. After that first crucial Keg Smash, the rest of the AoE rotation goes as follows. You get your Breath of Fire on the target right after Keg Smash, and then you use Chi Burst for the rest of your AoE. After that, you let Rushing Jade Wind tick if you're able to stay in the pull, or you kite until your next Keg Smash or Breath of Fire comes up, and rinse and repeat. Lastly, it's important to avoid as much damage as possible while still maintaining threat and dealing as much damage as you can at the same time. This is the tricky balance of Mythic Plus. Brewmaster actually has a unique situation where you can do your full AoE rotation while kiting. And this is Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, and Chi Burst on cooldown every time you can, while also staying out of range of the melees of all the mobs they're kiting, which gives us a pretty big advantage in some situations. Besides that, there's a couple little things like dodging frontal cleaves from mobs, avoiding puddles in the ground that could hurt you, dungeon mechanics that are all avoidable. You can almost always avoid as a tank unless you also put your DPS in harm's way in the process. Now getting into Brewmaster rotation and when to use defensives. I won't go into great detail on rotation. I think there are good resources for it out there, which I'll list in the comments below. But in general in Mythic Plus, you do want to keep Keg Smash on cooldown regardless of what pull you're doing, and Blackout Strike, if you're able to stay in melee, is your second priority. That followed by Rushing Jade Wind at all times on AoE if you're taking the talent. You should also keep Breath of Fire on the mob as long as you can, and then use Tiger Palm to not overcap energy. Both the last two abilities don't do very much damage anymore, but they are important to weave into the rotation when you can. For more detailed information on the Brewmaster rotations, for everything including AoE, single target, with Blackout Combo Talented, go ahead and visit peakofserenity.com, as well as the Discord if you have any questions, which I'll link both below. As far as defensives go, we have 3 major abilities that you should keep in mind while tanking dungeons. These 3 defensives are Fortifying Brew, Dampen Harm, and Zen Meditation. Since Dampen Harm only has a 2-minute cooldown, this will be your most used defensive, and it should be used as much as you possibly can throughout the run. In general, the best use of Fortifying Brew and Dampen Harm would be at the start of an AoE pull when you're bound to take lots of damage while getting everything rounded up, getting lots of threat on them. During this period of time, your healer may not have their hots on you or their main heals on you going yet. Your Breath of Fire may not be on the mobs yet, so you're bound to just take a little more damage than usual. So this is generally the time frame in which I use either Fort or Dampen, or in some cases, both at the same time to really reduce a big pull's damage. Our third major defensive, Zen Meditation, is a special use defensive, and it's kind of unique to Brewmasters in that it has very few instances where you can properly use it. I always find better spots to use Zen Med as I play the dungeons more and more, but in general what you want to do is use it on a big magic attack that would otherwise kill you. Identifying what attacks are physical based or magic based is important to know before using Zen Med. For example, there's a mechanic on the last boss of Motherlode that he just shoots you for magic damage for about 10 seconds, which is perfect for using Zen Med. Other than using our major defensives well in dungeons and as often as we can, the basics are just keeping up Iron Skin full time and purifying with whatever charges you have left when major damage happens. Deciding when to use a Purifying Brew charge takes lots of practice and experience, but in the end, you really just want to do it when your healer would need you to purify, rather than wasting Purify charges when your healer is just fine healing you through the damage. Lastly, on the defensives, Brewmasters also get a small 5% damage reduction from keeping Breath of Fire on the mob, so do this as much as you possibly can. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Brewmaster utility and the perks that we now provide to our groups. With Leg Sweep now being baseline for Brewmaster, you can have both Sweep and Ring a Piece at the same time. That alone is big in terms of group utility that you can bring as a tank. In addition, we can keep a mob permanently CC'd through the use of Paralysis, which is now very strong against the infested affix and no longer removes dots. Brewmasters also have a poison and disease dispel in the form of Detox, which has great value in the new dungeons. There are poisons and diseases everywhere. Brew mitigation stayed largely the same from Legion, but other tanks lost quite a bit of their self-healing and their own mitigation. Since the major difference of self-healing was mostly cut away from other tanks, Brewmasters are actually very good tanks for staying alive on extremely hard-hitting bosses or packs of mobs. With this in mind, and our utility abilities combined, Brewmasters are a solid tank for pushing Mythic Plus and Battle for Azeroth. And that's it for now. It's been a blast playing beta and testing Transcendence and Ring of Peace spots in all the new dungeons. I don't want to ramble on and on forever, so if you have any questions or want more details, please feel free to ask in the comments below or on stream sometime. I put in some clips after this of some of the neat tricks you can do as a monk that I found so far. And thanks again everyone for the support, and have a great time in BfA. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. game if you get hit by that.
Oh, I was supposed to die! No!
I knew you were gonna get hit.
Oh, I was committing. I was like, it's gonna die. It's gonna die.